Hi, hey, this is Kenn Renner, real estate expert in North Austin Metro, and I'm here with David Grant. He's my coach with the Tom Ferry organization. I've been coaching with him for over a year now. And we were just having a great conversation about how to become financially free and what that looks like for not only for our clients, but also for ourselves as realtors. We're on the cutting edge, we're on the front lines of getting the best deals out there. What I'm going to be talking about today is how you can become a real estate investment specialist, not just another realtor that happens to sell investment properties, but one that really specializes in that niche. The reason I do that is because there's very few specialists in the real estate investment realm as far as realtors are concerned. So I want to encourage you that this is a great way to help your clients build their financial freedom as well as yourself to be able to build financial freedom. When Tom was on stage at the summit last August, one of the things he said on his slides, I've got all the slides here. Thanks, Tom. If I had one regret, it would be I wish I'd lived more simply and bought more real estate. His goal is to not let us as realtors or our investor clients also have that regret that we didn't buy enough real estate. David and I are going to talk about we all own real estate. We've been in real estate families for all of our lives, and so David, you've helped me develop a plan and eventually going to become a product that we can help all of our agents and all of our clients become financially free.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Ken, so much. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the last year. You are a trailblazer. Uh, you've been doing this in when the 90s, you were telling me?
I got my first license in 1983, so that makes
Wow.
it 40 years. I'm 60 as of last month. So that's kind of where we started the conversation, David, is that first of all, I saw it from stage that Tom was concerned that there are a lot of people that work in real estate until they die. They don't have, in other words, you got to work so you don't run out of money, right? And they don't have a plan to create passive income to be able to support themselves and their family and live financially free. And that's where, it kind of hit me is that was my story with my rich dad and my poor dad. David, tell me about a little bit more about yourself. I mean, so that the people listening on this
Yeah.
knows who you are.
Yeah. So, coaching you for the last year, Ken, I've actually been a certified real estate business coach with the Tom Ferry organization, moving into my eighth year this year. So I have thousands of hours of one-on-one coaching. On top of that, I've been a real estate professional myself for 24 years here in the Las Vegas area. And since 2018, I have been a broker partner here in Las Vegas. I oversee our Las Vegas operations, which currently has two offices, about 205 agents in total. So I'm very passionate about one, using my experience in the industry, right? And I've had a vast amount of experience. I not only survived, but I thrived in the real estate crash in 2008, nine, where you know you can't keep doing the same thing when the market changes, right? So I had to pivot my strategy, and I knew that short sales and REO foreclosed homes were the next wave coming. So I developed that skill set to
Right.
be able to handle that type of business, which fortunately for me, it worked out really well because here we are, 2024, and I still have three of those REO accounts that I established back in '09, '10, where I work with those different asset management banks liquidating their properties.
Well, you
Um,
also manage, you oversee a management of hundreds of thousands of units. How many units do
Yeah.
you?
So here in our brokerage in Las Vegas, I have a full time staff of seven in property management, and we currently manage just under 1,000 uh, single family units here in the Las Vegas area, and we are always looking to grow. So uh, I couldn't do that on my own, so I've got a property management director, and then we have a complete support staff underneath him to do that. And the goal is here, working with my coaching clients, is to not only help them develop. We talk about passive income. Most agents, and you and I talked about this, don't have an exit strategy, right? They don't know that at some point we don't want to be selling real estate until we die. We need to get out of this business, and we need to have a process to get out of it gracefully so we can have some passive income. That's going to become one, by having an effective book of business, right? And then two, how are we going to invest to build our own personal portfolio so that we can, ride off into the sunset gracefully, so to speak. Right. So I'm passionate about coaching. I'm passionate about helping real estate professionals, my clients succeed. And I was jumping at the opportunity to sit here and have a chat with you on the podcast today. So I appreciate you having me.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. One of the interesting things about real estate and real estate agents is over the years, I've noticed that many of them don't own any investment property. Some of them don't. Some of our cohorts don't even own their own home. And it goes back to the whole thing of why we started investing in the first place, kind of going back, just going in my own life, was looking at, I call it my rich dad, poor dad, a story, because, Robert Kiyosaki wrote that amazing book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But it was actually co-written by Sharon Lechter, who's the CPA, the financial mind behind that. And I had the opportunity to share the stage with her on several occasions, and she's become a friend. And so it's interesting that I look back at my own story as I was helping clients in California realize that maybe there's a way for them to build some financial freedom outside of the California overpriced, high priced real estate market. But I looked at just my dad bought the first house in 1963 when I was born in San Mateo, California for $17,000, a VA loan. And looked up that house, and it's in my presentations. I looked up that house. It's now worth almost $2 million. Yeah, I think
Wow.
back about it. If he just had kept that one house, that first house, he would have been a multimillionaire, and it would have been free and clear decades before he passed on. So that one house. But then I went through all the houses we lived in, whether he rented or whether he bought, because he bought, sold, bought and sold, bought and sold. And I counted up that was just like 11 houses that added up to over $12 million just by the homes that we lived in. And I
Right.
started thinking, what if I had 12 houses free and clear? And then I hop over to my rich dad, who's my father-in-law, who's still alive, and he's the one who actually turned me on to Texas. And he has bought and hold, bought and hold, bought and hold, 1031 exchange, bought and hold, created a portfolio of properties. He doesn't have to work anymore, and he hasn't had to work really for the last 10 years. And so, and really, my dad was an attorney. He was a real estate attorney. You'd think that you'd be able to do this. My rich dad he never even got a broker's license. He's just a realtor, bought property. If we could do it on the numbers work on a napkin, I'll buy it. So
Right. Right. I can remember my parents' similar scenario. First home that he purchased from when I was born was in 1972. I was born in 1968, but in 72, I can remember him telling me the story that he bought a home in right outside in Newport on the Balboa Peninsula,
he used
and
to
his
live there.
friends for $400,000. And his friends are like, "Are you crazy? Like $400,000 in 1972? You're going to buy this?" And that same house today is about $4.5 million, right? So the key is this. I think in the last 20 years, 15 years, I think people have lost the vision of real estate is a long-term play, right? Because there's three things that we're always going to need in this world: food, clothing, and housing,
Yep.
right? So, but I think people's focus had changed where they started with appreciations rising in the 2000s, and uh, that it was a piggy bank, right? Hey, the value went up. I'm going to cash out, pull it out. And I think they kind of got away from the core of the compound effect, if you will, over the longevity of that, to where now you can have 15, 20, 30 years down the road, you're living, getting free income. And you're, more importantly, I think, too, is you're building a legacy
For your children. Yep.
that you can turn down to your children and move on. Right. So I think there needs to be a little bit of adjustment in the way people look at how real estate functions, where we've kind of gotten into that piggy bank mode, I call it, right? Where, oh, we cash out, tap out, where you buy it, you hold it. It's a long-term play, right? And I started that way with myself. My first home I bought, right?
Mhm.
$129,000 here in Las Vegas in 1994. Got there for 6 years, rode the appreciation, took some of the equity, bought my second home that we moved into, kept that home as a rental, right? And that was actually the methodology that I've used the entire time, right? Like, this isn't my dream home. I keep this. Now it becomes a rental. What's my next step? what's my next step? Um, so I think, people just have to have a little bit more of a perspective of how that long-term compound effect is, because real estate has never gone down in the long term, right? If you look at the
Right.
way the value has
And
gone.
look at any 10-year period, it's always exceeded. Being a real estate investment specialist is that a lot of our realtor friends don't consult with their clients who are trying to move and say, "Well, have you thought about keeping the property?" And so as a rental, I mean, like I said, I wished I kept the first house I bought in 1983. If I
Mhm.
wished I kept it, right? Or and many along the way. But it's like, why are you coaching them to sell that property? They've got some tax benefits if they've been there through the other last 5 years. They could still rent it out for 3 years and still get the over, 250, 500,000 exemption.
Mhm.
By the way, if you lease your house out, you don't have to worry about selling it, and all that whole thing, and you can move when you want to. That's just a simple way. That's why I say every buyer and seller can become eventually can be an investor client. And so that's kind of what I'm teaching is the people, our realtor friends, to get into a specialty of real estate investing, even if it doesn't work in your area, because you have the Tom Ferry network with thousands of agents and a a spectrum of those that actually work like I do as investment specialists that we can connect with and refer and get referral fees. Give give our clients a meaningful conversation, as Tom says, a meaningful conversation. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about investing with David Grant of some condos out in Vegas? Have you
Right.
thought about this? And he owns a property management company. He owns a real estate. Have you thought about this? You know, I've got a friend out there. He's a Ferry network, and his name's Kenn Renner, and he sold over $100 million in the last and since 2020 in single family homes. That's over 400 sales.
Right.
If I didn't do that, I would have starved because I was thinking outside the box. So, conversation number one is the riches are in the niches. So becoming a real estate specialist, and because you're going to be in a niche, number one. Number two, you can diversify across the nation because they buy anywhere. The investors can buy anywhere. And then thinking outside the box. A lot of people like, well, if I sold my house in California, where else in California I'm going to buy because it's so expensive? I said, well, why do you have to do that? Here's an opportunity. We took Mr. Bill, which is one of my clients, and I talked to his son who's inheriting his portfolio someday. He turned one house in California in San Mateo into 9 houses here. His income went from 3,600 a month to 13,500, now $17,000 per month, doing a
Right.
1031 all tax deferred, all with no taxable liability at the time he did it. Got it, and he's retired. He doesn't have to work anymore. He was a printer. I mean, he was owned a printing company. And he just had a passion for real estate, sold it, and 1031 it. But
Yeah, and by doing that, now all of his money's not locked up in one property. It's diversified over multiple units. So at any point in time down the road, if you want to liquidate one or two out of
right,
my 10 or 12,
right,
you still got the passive income coming in, but you have that asset that you can liquidate, right? So that's a key, Ken, is
yep,
thinking out of the box, right? And I think what happens from my perspective as a coach, a broker with 200 agents, most agents don't think out of the box. Okay. And the one, you've got to educate yourself, right? As we talk about being the knowledge broker,
right,
right? You've got to know those numbers inside and out so that you can present it to one, the already savvy investor, right? Because if they're a savvy investor and you don't know your business, they're going to be like, well, this guy's just talking out his,
yep,
closet. Where if I know the numbers, they're going to respect this person's a knowledgeable person. They understand it. You'll be able to have a deep understanding of, so you can break it down for the novice investor, right? Where they're just getting started. So you've got to build that knowledge base to be the knowledge broker. And then I think the other part of it is sell your home. We need to put our client continue to put our clients' interests ahead of ours sometimes. And I think sometimes agents are, hey, I haven't had a closing in a few months. We need to get your home sold. Where maybe the better strategy would be, hey, have you thought of this? Right. So I think it's kind of twofold is sometimes why we We just don't have the knowledge base because we haven't taken the time to really understand the metrics of investing and the long compound effect. Um, and
Well, the thing about it is, why would they give up their 2.5, 2 3/4 interest rate, or should they? And then go
right,
into a 6.5 interest rate on their new home, or maybe they'll get something from the builder that's a little more attractive. But the bottom line is that if you've got this great interest rate on your current primary residence and you want to turn it into a rental, that's an asset in its own right of having a low interest rate mortgage like that. And so you don't have to sell it. You could rent it out, get the tax benefits, all that. And you still have, if you've been there for a couple of years, you still have 3 more years to decide whether you want to be a landlord or not.
yep,
So I teach my clients, especially the young ones in their 20s, I teach them, hey, I can teach you how to be a real estate gypsy. And within 3 years, you can have 3 properties, 2 primaries, and 1 investment property if you follow what I did, all owner occupied financing by playing the gypsy. And when they're young, they can do that. So millennials love real estate and they love real estate investing. And so that's what I'm here is to encourage our Ferry partners and friends to say, hey, let's start having those meaningful conversations, not only with our clients, but with ourselves and our spouses about, hey, maybe we should be investing. That's actually how we got restarted up going into investing in 95, 94, 95. I told you I created a first time home buying seminar and I
mhm,
started selling dozens and dozens and then 100 homes in 1 year. And so it just started to compound because no one was helping first timers out. But then my wife goes, how much is that house in Pflugerville? And I said, oh, that house is 98,000 with DR Horton. She goes, 98,000. She goes, what would it rent for? And I go, at the time it was 1,200 because it was Dell was just blowing up out here and everything like that. She goes, those numbers work pretty well. I looked at them.
right,
The next day we bought two. And that's been
right.
kind of our history. We bought two. We didn't just buy one, we bought two. And and right across the street from each other. And so we've been kind of doing that for a long time. And I tell you what really helped out. I humbly made a mistake of buying $1 million house overlooking Lake Travis in the first part of 2007, right when everything collapsed.
Yeah, you were at the peak of pricing.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't follow my own advice and watch the cycles of the market. I just got wrapped up in this beautiful house, and I had 24 rental properties at the time.
Mhm.
Well, this house was an elephant, and fortunately, the Austin market was still pretty robust, even with all the short sale. I was able to sell one after the other to free up some capital to be able to not go bankrupt during those horrible real estate times.
Yeah,
So, still preserved everything. Didn't lose it all. But that's what's nice about it is I could store my money in real estate. Otherwise, I'm going to spend it.
that's
So
right.
that's kinda like I store it off in cash value life insurance. I store it in the real estate because if it's in my bank account, it's gonna go.
As real estate professionals, one, a lot of times we just get caught up in the day to day of doing business, right? And we don't ever think about where do I want my family, my finances, my business to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then a lot of times I see where they don't breathe any life into what that plan may look like, saying like, well, in the next 5 years, I want to accumulate, uh, you know, 5 investment properties, one per year. We need to breathe life into that, right? Like, what is the price point? What are the markets? Is it your local market or is it outside of your market where the opportunities are at? What am I going to need cash at to point to down payment closing to fund this, to build that out? And once we breathe some of that life into it, now it becomes more tangible, right? We look at it and say, okay, I need $40,000. I can put X
Mhm.
amount out of per closing. And by this time of the year, I'll have that in there and I can start looking, right? So I think that just have to, where do I want to be?
Mhm.
What is it going to take me to get there? And just like anything, you've got to build your knowledge base. And one of the things that you say, Ken, that I absolutely love, we always say the riches are in the niches, right?
Mhm.
But specialists
Right.
make more money,
Of course they do.
right? Because you've got the service that they need, right? You understand the game, you're a specialist in that area, and people will flock to you because one, Tom always says what? People are going to what? They got to know, like, and
Yep.
trust you,
Yep.
right? And you check off all those boxes and they're going to trust you because hey, I've got a methodology. This is what it works. This is how it is. Here's what my other clients have said,
Yep.
right? It's not emotional, right?
Right.
We know if you're going to go buy, like you got caught up in that home at Lake Travis, that was emotional,
Yes, it was. Yeah.
right? Where with the investment strategies, like you said, with your, hey, the numbers work. The
Right.
numbers make sense. It takes all that emotion out of it because it's an investment vehicle. So, as you know, a lot of times those investors are a lot easier to work with.
Yeah, we were talking about that. And so, another thing about trust is transferable.
Mhm.
So, what happens is most of my clients are word of mouth referrals from, and a
Right.
lot of, I'm dealing with international clients too. They think differently. A lot of the Far Eastern people, they love real estate and they've seen in their own home countries that they were able to, that the people that owned real estate were the ones that were financially set, right? So they come with that mentality. They're okay with buying in different regions and things like that. So, and they're less emotional. And so it's not about like that emotional buy that of buying overlooking Lake Travis. It was beautiful. But that was an emotional buy when you're buying investment properties, do the numbers work? The location work? We're dealing with people that have higher income demographics. A lot of them are accredited investors. They're not necessarily geographically bound. Like Mr. Bill, that came to me. He bought a house a long time ago. I sold that one, and then he sold his San Mateo house. His son actually sold it, and then he came to me, bought 9 more houses. And so he didn't care that they were out of state, and I don't think he's ever seen all of them. So
Right. Right.
Um, and so they're less emotional. They often buy multiples over time. My goal is to buy 2 more this year. The reason I'm able to do that, David, is that I've got a huge, huge tax saving. We can talk about that. A lot of people, I didn't even know that we could cost segregate these properties and be able to shelter our real estate income.
And
Um,
Ken, that's an interesting point. And I would love for you to expand on that a little bit for our people listening and watching today, on the tax savings via the depreciation
yeah.
and the cost segregation a little bit.
We teach our clients this too, because we have a lot of clients that are in the Bay Area. One stays at home and the other one works. And so either spouse can become a real estate professional. And there's a whole seminar on that. But in a nutshell, we as real estate professionals licensed, we are already a designated quote real estate professional. What it allows you to do is it allows you to take the depreciation, which is normally the building divided by 27 and a half years, that you get that savings every year. But if you make over $150,000 a year, you can't write it off on your, a normal person can't do it, write it off on their ordinary income. But the real estate professional can. And so that passive income, let's say it's 7,000, like in a typical Texas home, maybe $10,000 in depreciation every year. That now can also shelter your ordinary income because of what the IRS allows as a real estate professional designation.
Right.
And that's huge. Now, if you have 10 properties, that's $100,000 in just write off for 27 and a half years. So the 2017, Trump passed a law that allowed cost segregation to accelerate that depreciation on anything that was less than a 20-year depreciable value. What it meant was, as a real estate professional, if I did a cost segregation analysis and I was able to generate $100,000 in accelerated income in depreciation, I'm allowed to offset my ordinary income with that. Because I sold well over 100 homes a year for a couple of years, I was going to get slaughtered by the IRS. 100 by CPA said $155,000 tax bill for you. And I'm like, ah. And then I happened to go to a presentation that I was hosting, and a CPA was there, and he talked about this cost segregation. And I said, "You're kidding me." He goes, "Nope, that works." And so I did 2 cost segs on one of my properties, I literally wiped out my tax, even though I was grossing over 1 million a year. So
Well, those are things that you taught me the little rule towards the end of last year,
yep,
that it was uh
the Augusta rule.
yeah, okay. I started to say sawgrass.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
Like that's brilliant, right? Um,
yeah,
so now the one disclaimer that I always give out to my real estate agents within my brokerage are right. Hey, unless you have that CPA designation behind you, right?
right.
You need to have a working knowledge of what those tax benefits, the cost
Right.
segregation is. But I think you would agree it's equally important for us to align ourselves with tax professionals that understand that, as opposed to just the guy maybe down at,
Yep, a specialist.
tax place,
You
right?
want to you want a specialist. So that's what I do when I develop my whole network of help. Is every one of these people that I work with are specialists in the investment realm. So you don't
Right.
want to just send you don't want to send your client to HR Block and explain cost segregation. Like, well, Andrea, my assistant, her husband's a CPA. He didn't know anything about because he's a corporate CPA. He didn't know anything
Right.
about cost segregation. Got to have a real estate CPA or access to one. I'm sure we could find plenty of them through the Ferry network.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the key. It's just like building your support team around you, right? If you're the knowledge broker and the expert, you've got to have that support people behind you that have that knowledge. Like I made a huge mistake my first 5 years in business as a real estate professional. Person that was doing my taxes was kind of a standard, you know, just monthly paid, payday, taxes are withhold, just kind of a standard tax preparer.
Yeah.
I missed out on thousands of dollars of things that could have saved me money as a real estate professional until I got to the person that understood, you know, the self-employment and the different avenues you can do in real estate. So it's a critical to surround yourself with that team.
That's the thing is that our clients are out of state. Many of them never step foot in our area, and they want to be able to put their head on the pillow at night. And if they know that they have a specialist taking care of it, then they know that they've got everything's in line. You know, the property management, everything, and it's really it becomes a passive investment. They really don't have to be involved. Never speak to a tenant. Never have to deal with a broken toilet. I mean, it's just, and that's what I think a lot of people are afraid of because no one's out here teaching it. Where our real estate community is not saying, "Have you thought about real estate investing?"
Right.
And
Right.
if you don't know about it, you can team up with me as an agent, and I'll guide you through it. If you got a client that wants to do a 1031 or exchange or whatever it is, and I'll be glad to help out because we still have great markets here in San Antonio and New Braunfels, and Austin's having the struggles right now. But I'd stopped selling in Austin about 2021, and we were buying on the outskirts of Austin, Denver, different. So we were thinking outside the box.
Right. And I think part of that key component is too, and you've had some of that conversation and even my brokerage, our company, we have recently expanded into your geographic area, right? Because we know where the trends are at. But you nailed it with me. We are talking, was it that is it 5 corridor between San Antonio,
I-35, yeah.
I-35, right?
Yeah.
You're the knowledge broker,
Mhm.
right? So you're being able to tell, like, hey, in 10 years, these are all connected now, right?
Yep.
And so you're looking in that future, that path of where it is, and strategically setting your people up to say, hey, you're going to buy today at this price point in 5, 8, 10 years. This is all connected and it's only going to go up.
Right. Oh, so why not buy 2?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
people are just amazed. Andrea, my assistant, just closed on a 1,440 square foot house near San Antonio, brand new construction, the 5.25 builder interest rate, at $202,000 purchase price.
Mhm.
People like new construction for 202,000. Where is that? Yeah, 20 minutes from downtown San Antonio.
Right.
So it's out there, and that's why I'm encouraging our fairy friends to think outside the box and call me or we'll get me and David will find you somebody in North Carolina if you want to invest there. We got agents in Florida that would be able to help you out. So it's great to be able to network, talk about these things in the different markets. And Vegas is still a good market. So, that's kind of where I'm coming from is trying to help get our clients to think outside the box, get our agent friends to think outside the box. And it's been super, super profitable for me. I came to Texas to buy investment property. I bought 3 houses the first time I came here. So wish I kept them. I bought them all for $70,000 each. So,
Right. Right.
I wish I
And
kept those.
and that's the one thing, we asked me to talk about this on the podcast with you. This is to everybody out there watching. Ken reminds me a lot of fun that
That's a
you
compliment.
want to see everybody succeed. You want to
Yeah.
see everybody to be able to have the opportunity to set your family up for long-term wealth, right? Like, what is the number one thing that separates wealth in the United States? people who own real estate.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
is the number one thing that separates the wealth gap, if you will, from the folks who don't own real estate and the folks that do. And whether it's just you owning your primary home, that gap is there, right? And one of the things that I always love to say, which I think people have to sit there and think about it, if they're dealing with a prospective buyer that is a renter, they're not sure about buying, whether you know it or not, everybody is going to buy at least one home in their lifetime. Is it going to be for yourself or for your landlord?
Right.
Right. Um, so by you wanting to deliver this to the Ferry network ecosystem, if you will, one, by empowering and teaching them on how to become that knowledge broker and the expert knowing the numbers, right? That's going to help them identify. And in that investment niche, Ken, like you pointed out, not everybody needs cash flow.
Mhm. Absolutely.
If I'm an ultra wealthy person or somebody where maybe I need a negative $500 a month on all my, right? Like everybody's going to be different. So you got to be able to know how to speak to the different audience that what they need. Right. So by you helping to educate them, not only can they help their clients become, wealthy and legacy built for their family, they're going to make more income to the real estate business, but it's also going to help them educate on how they can put their commission brokerage fees back into the purchase or the acquisition. We get first dibs a lot of times, and we know the thing's coming to market, right? Like you said something that was funny. You said, my client said, well, if you get a good deal, let me know. And you're like, well, if I get a really good deal, I'm going to buy it,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I really appreciate wanting to do this with us and
Yeah.
sharing the strategies to you know become an expert in that niche.
I think it's great. I love real estate. I love teaching about it. And the beauty about this is, David, I didn't even I barely passed high school. I had 1 year of community college. What
Mhm.
I had no, there was no career path. And my dad told me, get into real estate and finance. And I just ran with that. And built up a nice portfolio of properties. And it was what you said from our first meeting of the year was, "What's your number, Ken?" And I go, It's 20,000 a month." And what's that number? It's the money. It's the what I will feel comfortable enough that if I had $20,000 a month passive income where I don't, that's where work becomes optional.
That's right. And we've got to have that. I told you, Warren Buffett says, hey, if I'm not making money while I'm sleeping, you're not going to win in this game in life right now. Well,
Yeah.
right. And I think part of that is just having a strategic plan to do it. And you need to know, what does that number look like?
Yep. I
Right?
don't
If you
think,
don't know what that number is,
as Tom said from stage, he doesn't. A lot of, have you defined what wealth is? That was one of the first questions he asked during the final session. A
yeah,
lot of people haven't even defined it, and that's what we were talking about. What is it? What's our number? You said 8 years. You're going to be hightailing it to Cabo or wherever you want to go. And I'm the same way. By 68, I don't want to have to work. So I'm making plans. We're building. I'm buying two this year, two next year, two next, and then also building my business and my property management business, multiple streams of income, and sure love to teach other people how to do that as well.
yeah. Well, I know your knowledge base and skill set in this market. You've been doing it a long time. You know the numbers inside and out. I think one of the other biggest things that people need to think about is it's not geographically bound,
No,
right? You need to go where the opportunities are at,
hmm
right? And
and you
if
need
that
to
pond's been fished out, we don't
exactly
need you have that line in that water anymore, right? We need to
go
go
to
to
the
the other.
other, find another pond. Yep. And yeah, and that's the whole thing is that once you find that pond, you fish the heck out of it, right? So
That's right.
yep. And then it's always cyclical. It's gonna change. And that's why I'm kind of doing this, is to also network with other agents that specialize in this other markets. There's cash flow markets in the Midwest. There's great appreciating markets out on the East Coast. So, it just depends on what your long-term strategy is. And so I appreciate you, David. Any final comments?
The takeaways for me and people who are watching today, Ken is willing to share his knowledge base and his expertise in this field, right? Um, last year in your business, we were working together. You found an itch in your area and you've been riding that wave. You're like the pro surfer, you're cutting
Yep.
the waves and riding the waves. Became the expert on that. What is this niche? You're providing value to your clients. You've got to become the knowledge broker.
And have meaningful conversations around that knowledge. So that's what Tom encourages is you got to have, maybe there's something else we can talk about other than, hey, how about the weather? And maybe you want to sell your house in 3 to 6 months.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But I appreciate you having me here today.
Thanks,
Uh,
David.
Super valuable content that you're laying out, and hopefully here in the not so distant future, we will be able to put together some things that we're going to be able to roll out, hopefully to the Tom Ferry ecosystem, if you will,
Yeah.
to help take us all up another notch. Uh, Not only for our client base, but start thinking about you right, like what is my next 5, 10. Tom, Tom's big on what's my 5, 10, 20-year vision,
Mhm.
right? And then we have to start breathing life into that.
Absolutely. Well, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, my name is Kenn Renner, Ken with 2 N's, and it's Ken at buyaustin.com. That's KENN at BUY Austin.com. I'd love to chat with you and see what we can do to help build portfolios of cash flowing properties as well as referrals across the nation.
Ken, I appreciate you having me here. And anytime I'd be happy to jump all with you.
Thanks, David. You've been an
Thank you, sir.
inspiration. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Yes, sir.